Okay, everyone, we are live. So excited to be with you today for another installment of Practical Creativity, where we unpack the creative process so that you can put it to use in your life and your work. I could not be more thrilled to be here today with a dear friend and one of my favorite artists, Patricia Schnall Gutierrez, and she is just a shining light. And we met at the Bakehouse where she was an artist and I was the director a couple years back. And I've kept up with her and her career. We have gone on many cultural dates together, just seeing the worlds of music and visual art come together. So Patricia, tell us just a little bit more about you and what you're up to right now.
Hello, Marta. Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you, whether it's virtually or anyway. I haven't seen you in quite a while, so thanks for having me. Yep, that's me. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and the work that I do is basically based on my own memories, a lot of autobiographical type of work, but it's basically about all of us. You know, it comes from inside me. But what makes art special to me is that it connects with everyone else. So that's pretty much it. I do everything from painting, drawing, performance, film, installation, sculpture, you know, whatever I'm in the mood for. I've gotten to the point in my life I just do whatever the heck I want.
I love that. I love that.
My sandbox and I start.
That's amazing. And it's so funny because so many people are told, especially early on, it's really important that you have a niche. Like you should be this one thing. So you have made it your business to be about more of the things, all of the things, whatever, like you said, whatever inspires you. So did you feel that pressure, or like, what was it like? How did you come
absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was getting my degree, I was, my concentration was in painting and drawing. And that was it. That was really it. I mean, I had to really concentrate. And I can't say that the path that I took is necessarily the right path. It was the right path for me. You know, I get bored very easily. And I like a lot of experimentation. I've got an overactive thought process going on all the time. So if something strikes me as, you know, I open doors. I just go, well, I think I'd like to try that in this material and try it this way. And, you know, I just, I let it go. I let it go, and that's the way I enjoy making artwork.
I love that. When did you know you were an artist?
Oh, when I was a little kid. I can't imagine. I've had many jobs over the years because I had to make money, but I never thought of being anything other than an artist. So the jobs were generally helping with, you know, the household and the kids and the tuitions and the stuff. But I knew I wanted to be an artist from the time I was in second grade, I think, because I was the artist that was doing art. No, that was fourth grade. I was drawing the backdrops. I still remember the Wright brothers, and I had to do portraits of them on the fourth grade stage. So that was me. I was skipping mathematics, and the teacher had me in the back of the class drawing the Wright brothers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So even then you were kind of like merging art forms.
I guess so.
Theater, right?
Yes, I guess so. Yeah. The whole theater thing was always fun, although I didn't go into that. But I guess it came back, you know, years later is when I got into installation.
Terrific. Has that been your only Wright brothers artwork then?
Yeah, that was it.
That was enough.
It was unique, and I was thrilled to do it when I was in fourth grade, but that was the end of that.
Amazing. Bring us into your process. When you start a work, what does that look like? Like if we were there with you in your studio and you were starting to create a piece, what would that process look like?
Well, they don't all start the same way. And I can say realistically, most of them begin as a thought in my head in that time just before I'm waking up in the morning. And there's this clarity in there where my eyes are not open yet. And I just have to plant the seed. And all of these thoughts and ideas come streaming in. And then I have to make sure that I get up and don't forget them. So then I have to write them down, and then I start to draw them out. Or I start playing with materials. You know, they go in all different directions. So
Amazing.
yeah, it's different, but there's this very magical time in the morning.
For sure. And actually I think Edison used to take naps because he felt like he would do all of this work. He's a very disciplined person. He would work. He'd create. And then he would take a nap after lunch or sometime in the afternoon. He would keep something in his hand so that when he dropped it, he would be close enough that close enough to the surface that he'd wake up. But he definitely felt that like state between asleep and awake was like his most creative. And he made a point to get into that every day.
I never heard that before.
Yeah, so
there must be something magical about that time.
There must be. And actually I study metaphysics a little bit, and there's a writer that I follow who basically says that is actually called hypnagogia. Like,
I have to remember that word.
It's like where you're kind of lucid, but kind of not. And like, that's when you're ultra receptive to subconscious things. So if you're already creating in your subconscious, it's just a matter of time until it comes out
that's interesting, because somebody told me I'm a lucid dreamer because I realize when I'm dreaming and I have to wake myself up.
So maybe that's part of your artistic power.
Yeah, it's a little weird, I think, but
well, you know,
it's not real.
When your sleep is kind of weird.
Like I'll be aware I'm dreaming, and it's like, oh my God, you know, Patricia, you gotta wake up. This is too real. You've got to be dreaming. It can't be real. So I'm always afraid I'm going to get trapped in a dream one day.
Okay, well, hopefully you can work yourself out of it since you seem to be aware.
Yeah, I hope so.
Amazing. And tell us about materials. So you use a variety of materials in your work. How do you get inspired, or how do you find the right materials to express what's in your vision?
So the materials to me are an expression in and of themselves. So I like to, just as an example, I know you know that I've worked with hair, that I've worked with a lot of steel wool, a lot of things that relate to sheets, for example, that relate to laundry, and it builds out. I mean, whether it's audio, I bring in sounds or different things. It's very important that, for me anyway, to be able to create this dialogue in any way that I can. So if I'm looking to touch a chord, if I can touch that chord with a piece of steel wool, what do people associate steel wool with? Well, for me, I'm scrubbing those pots, you know? I mean, I have used it on other things too, but I think throughout time, and particularly because a lot of my work is about women, I take those materials that women in particular relate to, as I do.
Yeah, I saw one of your shows in Little Havana, and it was very much like an installation show. There was very few pieces that I remember being just like two-dimensional. And a lot of it was about exploring kind of like female identity through objects and experiences that are kind of like recognizable on some level to most women, but that might not necessarily be recognizable to men, because there's just something about that experience. Like you're talking about association, things like cleaning, you mentioned laundry. Can you tell us a little bit more about what inspires you, or how you put those pieces together? I was very moved by that show. It's been a little while since I've seen your work, but I remember.
Was that at the 6th Street Container? Is that the one that you were referring to?
Yeah.
Well, I can pick out a couple of different pieces that were in there, I guess. There was one that I have used a couple of different times, and this is the bundt cake. And it was made out of wax, and it revolved around. That particular one, I used it in a little different way in that show, but it's about, in my life, I was always, you know, the mom and the sister and the mother and doing all this kind of stuff. And I was making the birthday cakes. It's not like we're eating cake all the time, but it was such a tradition that I always had. And it was always the women in my family that did that. I can say that as in my children's generation, that is beginning to change. But particularly in my generation, you know, we were taught this is the woman's role and the mother's role, and this is everybody else's role. And they were very well defined throughout a lot of my life. So, you know, I'm going off on a tangent here.
No,
But
I love it.
I'm thinking about maybe another piece there too, and there was one that was a self-portrait, and it was a little bit sad. And I think it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you can relate to this. As you get older, you sort of start to melt or drip or droop or something. And that it was a mop, which was like white hair, and some pantyhose that looked sort of like breasts. I won't go into it too much, but you can imagine how this whole thing was looking. Then there was another piece about actually rape in there, which was something that I thought I probably should have brought back out again during this whole resurgence of women coming out and talking about rape. But that was an experience that was very close to me, and I made a piece about. But that was all. There was like 200 feet of washing machine hose. I think this probably maybe had the most impact, this particular piece. And out of these, there were, you know, little pieces of hardware, and I had audio going with it. And in the audio, there was whispers. And it's basically, you know how they say everything comes out in the wash. Well, that didn't totally come out in the wash, that experience. And it was this strange kind of sound. It sounded like a washing machine going. And there were whispers in there, you know, come closer and I'll tell you, because this was a secret.
Right.
For many, many, many years. So, yeah, that's sort of just how some of them came to be.
Really, really deep. I love seeing your work because you do feel changed. You definitely get drawn into the work, and it's not just kind of like, oh, okay, nice. It's something that really like draws you in, and you definitely feel things. And I don't know that I can even put it into words, because that's not the experience that I had. It's like not a verbalized experience. It's just like a feeling experience. And I find it to be very powerful. And I've seen your work, you know, change over the years. And tell us, especially some of the themes around like motherhood and womanhood. You're a mom. So did any of this come up especially after you became a mom, or has it just always kind of been there?
Yeah, no. Well, I became a mom when I was quite young. Number one, I was only 24. So this has been really, when I think about this, is my adult life. This is, you know, that's how I define myself. I'm a mother. Because so much of my life was, I have 3 kids. You know, raising the kids, trying to make ends meet, trying to be an artist, and juggling it all together. So, yeah, I mean, before I was a mom, I think I was in 3 shows. I was just finishing up college. You know, I had gotten picked up by a gallery. I was working part-time in another gallery. I was lucky enough to have a one-woman show, but they were all about the female figure, pretty much. And then, of course, once I had children, it changed dramatically. I mean, everything changed dramatically. It was almost like the hormones in my work changed. It didn't feel that I wasn't the same person. I was almost a different person. And people that are, you know, I don't know if it's just as a caregiver or a mother or what that feeling is, but you lose a part of yourself and it becomes a part of someone else. Wow. So of course that has to go into the work. Totally changed it. As a matter of fact, I want to mention too that when were you at the bakehouse? What year did you leave there? I don't remember.
Started in 2013. I was there till 2016.
Okay, so you remember the whole thing. You know, I've been in Miami since late 2007, and in 2011 I was very lucky to meet these 2 incredibly wonderful women who are still a part of my life. Marina Font, who's a photography-based artist, and Rhonda Matrani, who's a videographer. So they are also mothers. So, you know, I don't know if misery loves company or something, but we spoke the same language, and we work separately on our own artwork, but we work quite a bit with each other. And we do these larger than life installations, multimedia, bringing in video. And the last one we did was a short film, which was just, I don't even know where to go with that. It was just so incredible to work with them, and then expand even further those materials and things that I work with. So, but again, with them, it was about being a mother. But interestingly enough, now my children are grown. Now I have grandchildren. I'm working now on a script. If my collaborative partners are watching, I don't know if they are. They don't even know I'm doing this yet, but it will. I'll throw this all on the table at some point. It's more about, you know, post. So that's a whole different experience too.
Sorry, you cut out for a second. It's about post what?
Post raising children.
Post raising children.
You know, like your life is very different when your kids are at home. And then when they're gone, it's like freedom, you know, like, but it throws you in a whole different ballpark.
Yeah.
You know, they're still there. They're still there, but you know, they're grown and they're adults, and I'm not held accountable for all the things that they're doing now. So yeah, it's put me in a different place, and it's interesting to see now where, as I'm getting older and going through, I mean, the subject matter is just like a subject matter up the wazoo here. As I'm getting older, now it's a whole different feeling. And then where, you know, I mean, we're on this path in life. It's only so long, and then it ends. So, you know, where am I on that line at this point? And how do I feel now?
Wow. I relate to that. I found myself going through I used to define myself by my work, or, you know, where I came from or where I didn't come from. And then, you know, like life stage, and then jobs. And now I realize, like, I don't know, I have a friend, Corey Davis, who was on the stream a while back, and he talks a lot about intersections. Like, it's not that you're this or you're that. It's like how all of these layers come together to form the person that you are. And we all have that. So, you know, to be inclusive means being able to bring all of those identities with you. And of course, they shift and change. And the way that you define yourself does change over time as well, just because you have more experience. I read an amazing book by an architecture professor at RISD, and it's called The Storm of Creativity. It's about this big, but it's very dense and is extremely beautifully put together. It's a book that I read over several months. Like, I would savor like a page at a time and like deeply absorb it.
Yeah,
It's one of those like yummy, delicious books, one of my favorites. So she essentially says that creativity is, it has two parts. One part is kind of your own personal experience, your lived experience. And then it's some sort of like priming having to do with outside things, like you're reading an article, you see something on TV, you have that image in your hypnagogic state, whatever it is. But there's something where you come to a situation and it's not a verbal thing, it's not a logical thing, but you recognize that there's something about it that's familiar. And then you plug in the thing that you have recently gotten from that other thing, and then boom, it becomes yours. So it doesn't feel like it's something other than what's completely natural. So it's not that you experience yourself saying like, oh, this is me being creative, but there's just like a flash where you're like, oh, and you know that you're going to combine this thing with that experience because it's somewhat familiar, but enough different with that extra thing that, and this is a very rational way to talk about the creative.
But somehow I'm getting what you're saying here. Yeah.
But it's like, oh, you just have that flash of like, oh, I know. And that's when it kind of becomes yours. And I think some of that comes from process, and some of that also comes from lived experience. So when we talk about identity, your identity is layers and layers of that lived experience. When I think about your work, it very deeply, as you've been talking about, really comes from that deep lived experience. And of course, as you go along in life, you just accumulate layers. So, I'm really just my brain is going wild here with just excitement about hearing you talk about your process, because I guess I'm intellectualizing it a little bit for myself, but like I totally relate. And it's something that when you experience your work, when someone experiences your work, that's what I feel like that just works, and it actually fires something in the other person. I think great art.
It's tough to put into words. It's difficult.
It's hard to put into words.
I remember I had a conversation with someone one time, and they said, well, there's like a formula. And I said, darn, can you get me that formula? I didn't know I still don't know what the formula is. And I understand all those things, like I've done this, there's a familiarity about it. You do something a certain number of times, you go, yes, whether it's in a painting or something. I know if I put these together and I mix this medium, it's going to come out like this. But I have never felt that I can actually put it into words, that there is some kind of a formula. Like you said, there's bits and pieces of all these things. And then all of a sudden you have those aha moments. And other times it's like, oh, I forgot how to make art, so and there's everything in between. Yeah. So I think I had one of my professors one time said to me, the best advice that she ever gave me, and it was just show up.
Yes.
And let it happen. So that I have believed that my whole entire life, and I've always had, whether it was in my home or now I'm very lucky to have a beautiful, beautiful studio, I have to just go. And I can't sit for too long or I get tired. I have to go, I walk around, I touch things, I look at things, and within, for me, minutes, it all starts to churn and starts to move. And if it doesn't, I just draw, because that's what I always fall back on, and just take it from there. But I just show up, just do it.
Totally. And that goes along with, I read a piece, Jerry Saltz's new book is coming out. And so, he's legendary for just being Jerry Saltz, and his prolific work, throughout the art world. But his book was kind of, the launch had to go on pause because of the pandemic. But he put out an article that basically said, one of the things I think it's called How to Be an Artist. One of the things that he shares in kind of like the piece that talks about the delay of the book launch is work happens if you're an artist when you're working. If you're not working, the magic doesn't happen. Right. So that's what you're saying too. Like when you show up, things happen. If you're not showing up, then it doesn't happen. So I think
I've tried different ways of doing it, particularly during this stay-at-home thing, because Georgia and I are in that vulnerable group. So I literally did not go to my studio for 5 weeks. I followed directions and I stayed home. We ordered in. I stayed. That's when the script started, because I had to do something. But I was waking up, getting these ideas, writing them down, and that only took me so far. Right. And it was like, I can't find the end to this piece here.
Yeah.
I can only spark that beginning of it. And it happens in the being there and the process of it. Things almost, for me anyway, they never turn out the way I think they will. It starts, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then it goes off into left field somewhere and turns into whatever it's going to turn into. It's like they have a life of their own, these things. So.
I totally relate to that. I think that's what I'm going through. And, many of my friends also just in this scenario right now, which is like, we thought it would be a thing. It's turning out to be something else. We're just not sure. So we get to go along for the ride now, and just let it be wherever it goes. Right.
Yeah. And play it out, just play whatever it is that you're doing. You never know if you won't like it unless you do it. You never know if you might even fail at it unless you do it, or whether you'll be successful. So you have to just do it. Yeah. You have to just get in there and just do it and see where it takes you. It's, if nothing else, whatever I've done in my life that hasn't worked out has always, and I say this when I've had some of the weirdest jobs. I mean, my collaborative partners call me Big Fish because I have done so many things out there just to have jobs. And there were times when I said, I'm going to regret doing back and worked into something that made up who I am and where it comes out in my work and how it creates this dialogue with other people. It all ends up in there.
Amazing.
So it's sometimes, you know, people get discouraged and they do things that they think are really, oh, I'm wasting my life away. Well, you don't want to get stuck in something like that. But, you know, if you need money and you got to go out and get a job, well, there's some pretty weird things that I've done.
Yeah. And
go with all that.
Part of the creativity process, right, is being open and trying lots of things.
Yeah.
Tell us more about what it's like to work with others, because visual art, you know, I'm a musician. So from the very time you start, you are working in groups. You learn in groups, you perform in groups, you rehearse in groups, like it's all a group activity. When I got to the bakehouse, I was like, oh, right, it's a collective, but it's also solo collective, right? So visual artists, you work in a studio usually by yourself. So it's so cool and fascinating that you have these collaborative partners. Number one, how did you discover them? And how do you work? Because 3 creative minds going at once sounds like a lot. Like how do you navigate that?
You know, I can say that the 3 of us love each other so much. That's not to say that we haven't fought, which we have. You know, we're in an emotional state and there's a lot going on. And sometimes we've had some pretty big shows together and stuff. So then there's tension. There's, you know, it's like being married really. But I can tell you how I came upon Marina first. If my memory serves me right, I was doing a project called the Package Project. And I think she walked into my studio when I was at the bakehouse. And it was, you know, I asked people to come in and there was this process where we would put wax on paper and we would fold it. And there was just this, it was a very fun project. It's still going on, actually. I've done it a lot of times in public. But it was a public participation project. So initially I asked artists to come in, women artists. And I believe she was one of the first artists that came in. She had a show going on at Dina Matrani Gallery, which I just loved her to begin with when I met her. And I went to go see her show and I was like, oh my God, this woman's in my head. Because what she was doing with photography was what I was thinking and everything else I was doing. So I brought up an idea to her that I wanted to do this performance thing. And I was looking for 3 women in particular to do it with. She says, I have to introduce you to Rhonda Matrani. You're gonna love her. We're all thinking the same thing. She introduced me to Rhonda and that was the beginning of how it all went. I mean, it's how we work together is very interesting. What I love the most about it, other than the fact that we're all connected in our thought patterns a lot, is that we can bounce ideas off each other. Like what I'm writing right now, I've got pages and pages and pages. This thing will probably end up being like a 5 to 7 minute video or something. But this will get thrown on a table, ripped apart, put back together. It's like there's puzzles. So, nope, that's not gonna work. We're gonna do this. And then an entirely different idea will stream off into this direction. So this is a spark which I try to put together. And this isn't the way we always work. It just happens to be with this piece that I will just say, okay, guess what? Let's throw it on the table and see what happens here. And then it turns into months of work, months and months and months. And we go back and forth. What do you think of this idea? What if we did this? What if it was yellow? What if it was blue? What if it was, 6 feet tall? And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And it's comforting to be able to bounce these ideas off of someone who, number one, you really, really respect.
Yes.
And then they will come back and you say, why didn't I think of that? So it's those moments that are just so special that, you're thinking and it's like we're continuing each other's sentences, which is, it's a unique experience. It really is.
It's so special and so rare. I think also of how in the art world, there's sometimes a tendency to hold back because you're afraid people will like take your ideas or take your sponsor or your donor or your gallerist or whatever. So not only respect, but like deep trust to be able to say like, here I am, here are my ideas, like, let's create together is really an act of, respect and vulnerability, right?
Yes. And I think that, those are some of the hurdles that as artists, it's unfortunate. That's something I feel as if I'm constantly working on. Don't be this way. Don't think this way. It's like, share something and more comes back to you. And I have learned that and I've worked with a lot of artists over the years. I've done a lot of curating. I have worked in galleries. I've managed galleries. I owned and operated, co-owned a gallery. So I've worked a lot with artists. So I've always felt compelled to help other artists too. Then there are those times that occasionally somebody will stab you in the back. That's not fun, but that doesn't happen more than it does.
Right.
So generally, I think that if you create these good bonds with other artists, that Rhonda Marina, that they're very special, and we really, like I said, it's almost like a marriage. We've been together since 2011. It has worked out very well for us, but we've had our little bumps in the road. And we will have to talk it out and just, but we get over it. That's part of life too. It can't all be peaches and cream. You have to go through some of the tough stuff.
Well, I think it also helps you evolve as an artist to have have a creative thought partner who you can really be sharing ideas with, because I don't know, the reason I liked orchestra is you make something together you don't make by yourself, and there's like an energy and like just this feeling of something that you don't get when you're by yourself in a practice room. But it's really great to be able to have a thought partner and to really create something magical because you are bringing your different selves together. I think that's really brilliant and pretty beautiful.
And we're like a support group for each other too. When one's not totally on, the other one is. When we've done talks at different places, it's comforting to know that one of us will, and it's not outshining. It's like we'll take over when it's needed.
And that's like an intuitive thing too, being able to know your partners well enough to like sense their energy and sense what they need. And I think that's also, men can do that too, but I think women are especially attuned to kind of like reading the emotional atmosphere of like what's happening right now that we're not talking about, but being able to kind of like get it and respond, maybe even non-verbally, is pretty powerful. So one more thing I want to ask you, and this has been such a fun conversation, and I'm so grateful.
Oh my gosh, 30 minutes gone by already.
I know. I'm so
grateful
quite
the talk.
for taking the time. I'm wondering, so your work is currently all over the place. Tell us just a little bit about where people can encounter your work, and are you gallery? Are you museum? Are you everything? Like, tell us more about that.
Well, it seems like it's all entombed right now because no one is going anywhere. I have 2 shows going on right now. One is in Wynwood, and I think it's supposed to be ending this month. But again, it's in the old Rebel building, and if you know that building, it's just the dream place to have a show. It was put on by Midday Projects and Wynwood 29. I've got quite a few paintings in there. That's, because I do a lot of paintings too. So that's up for a little while, and that's in Wynwood. The other one is in Fort Lauderdale. Neil Ramsey put it together. I'm there with 2 other artists. It's an interesting show because it's called Arts Up, and it's in Fat Village, and it's all installation, and it's all hanging from the ceiling of this tremendously big warehouse. And it took me 3 days on a scissor lift to get that all hung up there, which was quite challenging. But it's a very cool concept. So you walk underneath it and you look up at the whole thing. So that's going on now, but of course it's not open. Online, people can always look at my website, psgarts.com. You can find me on Artsy. I'm associated with several different galleries. If you go onto my website, you can, I'm not going to start rattling them off and stuff, but probably the best place is to go onto my website. I just redesigned it. I hope I did a decent job on it. I always try to keep, up to speed with the way things are supposed to look on your website. So I just redid that, but I have a lot of information as you scroll down. It's a little bit more desktop friendly than
mobile friendly
iPad or something. But yeah, everything's on there. People can find me.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'll definitely put that in the notes. I'll repost this on YouTube so that people can find you forever, I hope. And, what a pleasure, what an honor to spend some time with you, Patricia. It's so inspiring to hear about your work, your process, and just to be in your energy and to share this space here.
It's been great to be with you too, Marta. Really, I missed you. We haven't seen each other in a little while, but you're always in my thoughts, and we have lots of fun when we're together. So thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this.
Oh, sure, great pleasure. So we're going to say goodbye to our audiences. Everybody, stay creative. Let us know if you have any questions for Patricia. I'll be sure to pass them along, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody.